question in my with me here, and I'll do something after the podcast if that's okay.
That's brilliant. Thank you, John.
Without giving the game away.
What might it? You can tell people what you're reviewing. That's
No.
fine. You don't want to tell people.
No, because there's some actually fun things about both of them, technically, which I want to cover off on your words rather than podding.
Okay. Oh well, how intriguing! So people will have to wait. If you are,
I know. I'm just
who's
such a
here on
temptress.
Discord? Is anybody here?
There's a few people around.
Paul
I'm ju-
Riley. Hello, Paul.
I'm just looking for Running
Dak.
Dak so he can do the poll because he seems to be super sharp on that.
Holmeister. Well, your dad's
Well,
here, so that's all right.
My
Do you know what?
dad.
There's-
No,
No,
Tim's
my-
dad.
Your mum might be here.
The twist is it's the same person. Dun, dun, dun. No. Sorry.
That'd be surprising. I think particularly to my dad would be surprised.
yeah, especially to your mum as well.
I've logged onto the wrong thing again, haven't I?
Sorry, Olivia.
Yeah.
It's not like this when Darian's on.
I was only going to say that, in fact, so with your piece of intrigue there, so we're talking about issue 375 is the stuff where the shock horror things will be revealed. They won't be shock horror. But there's also an appearance, isn't there, Lee, by someone?
Oh yes, yeah, absolutely, yes, yes. He gets a mention. Mind you, saying that, I've had 2 podcast listeners in the shop this morning.
Really?
Yeah.
Who have you had in the shop?
I can't tell you their names, but they're not part of the Discord crowd. They are just sort of general listeners.
Right, okay.
I increasingly am visited by readers and listeners, which is very nice. They come and talk and bring me bits and bobs, and there's lots of them crawling out of the woodwork. So yes,
Do they bring biscuits?
I had a very nice gift from a reader a little while ago. I had a very large
Really?
Morrison's gift voucher, which will be funding the Grant Christmas dinner. So there we go.
Wow. Why did they give you? Why did they give you a gift voucher? It was just the sheer happiness they had with your service.
No, they asked for some. Well, yes, they asked for some advice, and I didn't bill them for the advice because it was just advice. So I didn't do anything sort of practical. I just gave them and steered them in certain ways, and they were clearly very generous. So thank you to that person.
So my dad has not selected which of us he'd rather have as a son.
And I
Lee.
wasn't even offered, so there you go.
You do it
Well,
as
to be-
a poll. You could do it as a poll for everyone.
Yeah. Who would you rather? Yeah, okay. It could be an open poll to everyone on here.
This could go very badly, Tim.
Who would
It
you
hasn't
rather
already.
have as a son or daughter who is a member of the PC Pro podcast? I think you have to write it now. I think
Who is your
Barry-
favourite child?
Darian, Roche, Nick. God,
Yeah.
who would it be? Yeah, just
All
name
of
your
the above.
favourite.
Oh, wow.
No, you can't have all the above.
No.
You're allowed to say
about-
something like, Dad, stop it at this point.
Go home, Dad. You're drunk.
You have to pick 4 for the poll. Well, Cole, we'll leave it to you.
Oh,
Blimey. Okay, who would you rather have as a child?
well,
This is
I'm gonna look
I'm
at you.
picking me, all right?
Are you?
So,
you
Dad,
can't pick yourself.
I have.
John, pick one of the others. Who would you, out of me, Barry, Olivia, Roche?
I can't be my own
Lee.
child, can I?
No.
So
Yeah,
I'm
that'd
gonna
be
go-
weird.
I'm going to go for Tim. There we go.
That's very. Thank you very much.
Yeah.
Well, I'm in the position where my dad died nearly 16 years ago, so I'm allowed to vote myself, all right? Thank
That's
you.
fair enough. I'll go with that. I have to say, I'm absolutely staggered that Roche has got the votes she has, because I'm going through the teenager strops at the moment, and I won't want to tell Roche to tidy her room, so I think on voters.
Wow, you know what though, Lee? I'm just watching this live. Okay.
Wow.
It's not.
well, super.
We've got. And Barry's doing particularly with his longevity on this podcast and his sheer good humour. I'd have thought Barry should at least get more than 1 vote.
Yeah, well,
Lee, you and I are stuck on 2. Olivia, I'm sorry.
Oh,
So
okay.
far, it's none.
Well.
You need to get. Barry's got another. He's got a simply vote. I'm going to call that. and
Oh,
Roche is in the lead.
Barry's logged on then.
Quickly,
Twice.
Olivia, change your votes.
I want to know the reason, the qualities they're seeing
Yes.
to determine that that's the favourite. Yeah.
Yeah.
Mind you, I guess, if you look at Roche's qualities, having an angry lawyer is possibly for some of these people is a bonus. You have to look at
Have
what.
we got a hum?
Oh, yeah, there's a bit of a wind, isn't there?
Wind hum.
There is a wind hum.
Is there a fan somewhere?
Hang on.
It could be.
No, it's not me.
Are you plugged in, Lee? Just out of interest.
I'm on a desktop, so yes.
Okay.
It's not the Darien hum.
I'm just going to mute myself just to check.
Oh yes, good thinking.
Yeah.
I will mute myself as well.
Okay.
He said.
No.
Okay, Olivia, can you mute yourself temporarily?
Yeah.
Yep.
It's you.
I've got a hum, have I? Okay.
You've got a-
No,
you've got a-
it sounds like a computer fan or a desktop fan.
Yeah, it might be my computer fanning itself.
Oh.
Not very loudly. It's not going into its crazy
So
mode.
it must be Intel then. It's Intel inside, isn't it? Yeah.
It's
Okay.
Intel, definitely. Yeah.
It's gone now,
True.
hasn't it?
Yeah, absolutely.
Oh, well, that's good.
I think it's going to be. Hopefully, Lee, it won't cause you problems, will it? Maybe.
Well, no more than the rest will, so it'll be fine. I'll pull out whatever we need to.
Content. I mean,
Yeah, absolutely. Just to note
Oh.
that it is 1 o'clock.
Yes. Okay, I shall begin. Hello and welcome to the PC Pro podcast. It is the 16th of October 2025. How did we get here? Today I am, I'm always, but always forever shall be, Tim Danton, Editor-in-Chief of PC Pro. Lee Grant is always Lee Grant. Hi, Lee.
Good afternoon.
John Honeyball is perpetually John Honeyball.
I'm perpetually grumpy old John. Yes, that's fine.
And Olivia Whitcroft is eternally Olivia Whitcroft.
Hello, no one wants to be my parent, Olivia Whitcroft.
Okay, so some context to that. So if you join us live on Discord, we sometimes start a little bit early, and have a little chat. And for some reason or other, the discussion this time around was who would you rather have as a child out of all the different PC Pro podcasters. Now, I can reveal that Olivia, I'm sorry, and Nick did not get any votes. Both myself and Barry got 2 sympathy votes, although I happen to know one of those was from you, Olivia, so thank you. And Lee got 3 votes as the child of choice. John came second, but top of the list came Roche. I think people are missing you, Roche. If you're listening to this, come back. So I should say as well that Roche will be coming back to us very much, hopefully next month. But she has been launching a new product, which is why she's not been with us these past 2 months. You are clearly missed. Anyway, the other thing that's clearly missed is professionalism in the PC Pro podcast. So let's start with some real quality, and that is Lee Grant.
Yeah, brace yourselves. Last Tuesday saw Microsoft turn off mainstream support for Windows 10, with the exception of those hitting snooze buttons via the issue. Now, we've covered this a few times in the last few episodes, so I'm not going to go sort of trawling over sort of those sort of areas again. But I just want to point out sort of what's been going on behind the scenes, because various repair and environmental groups threw a considerable amount of effort at Microsoft in the hope that they might change their minds. Now, of course, they didn't. Because I don't think they were ever going to. There's too many people that have sort of ditched their machines already because Microsoft told them to. I think that would just get very, very messy. But that doesn't mean that these activists' efforts have been wasted, and really far from it. Now, if all goes to plan, what has happened to Windows 10 really won't happen to Windows 11. Let me try and explain. Just to throw you some numbers that have been bandied around in the past sort of weeks by various organisations. Activists say that there's around 400 million Windows 10 PCs still out there which don't meet Microsoft's requirements for 11. That's things that are either in use or actually are not in use. So if you chuck that lot in a skip, you've created around 700 million kilograms of e-waste, which adds to the 62 billion generated globally each year. Now, just to throw in the UK here, we still remain the second highest producer of e-waste per capita globally. Norway currently holds that coveted gold medal position. But because the UK's recycling infrastructure is largely prehistoric, we can't process any of it. So we're also still one of the world's leading exporters of waste, shipping it to places in the world that have less recycling and biohazard management than we do. Or in other words, we export vast quantities of toxic waste to some of the poorest regions on Earth. Go us. Now, let me throw in also the 2019 findings of the Basel Action Network, who basically they track e-waste globally, that say the UK is the largest exporter of illegal e-waste in the world. To sum this up, a 2024 report by the UN states e-waste dumping is rising 5 times faster than documented e-waste recycling. So there's a bit of an imbalance in here. So if we just park that to one side and let's look at this from another perspective, which is digital poverty and technology exclusion, a report from January this year by the Green Alliance reveals some pretty startling facts. 1 in 14 UK households have no access to internet at home. 18% of people are only able to access internet on a smartphone. 28% of those feel this is a real disadvantage. And there's about 10.2 million people in the UK that lack really the most basic of skills. So saying to them, oh yeah, shove Linux on your machine, you'll be fine, it's just not going to happen. So the Restart Project has commissioned a YouGov survey that shows that 30% of people in Britain who currently own a PC running Windows 10 don't have a plan to change it. 62%, the numbers basically work out to about 13 million machines, which will carry on running as unsupported. So again, Microsoft's message of just buy a replacement machine, it sort of looks a bit out of touch and sort of bit of privileged messaging you'd expect from a corporation sitting on more gold than your average dragon. So on one hand, we have millions of working machines being thrown into a recycling system that doesn't work, and on the other, we have millions of people whose lives could be made magnitudes simpler and fairer by getting their hands on some working hardware. If only there was a way that these two problems could be solved in one go. So let me sort of tell you what's going on, because in the US, PRIG, who we've talked about a few times and I've interviewed for PC Pro, they're heading a coalition of advocacy groups basically to petition Satya Nadella to extend Windows 10 for free until 2030. And I'm pretty sure that Microsoft won't budge on this. But this move is really about drawing a line. Microsoft have peed on the floor, and PRIG are rubbing their nose in it to ensure they won't do it again. And currently in the US, the momentum is really with the right to repair movement, so expect some fireworks. Now, in the EU, and I think this will be very interesting to watch, they're calling for the same, but in addition, a change to the law to guarantee long-term software support, starting with an eco-design rule for laptops. And this is to include 15 years of updates. And if initially you're sort of rolling your eyes and think, that'll never happen, let me just sort of gently remind you that because some of these activists, they've now the ones that have got USB-C as the standard on small electronics, including iPhones and soon laptops, and things like user replaceable batteries coming too. They can also take credit for Microsoft backing down and offering Windows 10 ESU for zero cost. This iPhone, which I'm currently waving in front of the webcam if you're not watching us on YouTube, it's got a third-party replacement screen and battery in it. The screen cost me 26 quid. 26 quid. And thanks to these activists, Apple had to activate it. And there's no fault with it. Everything is working because they banned parts pairing. They also got Chromebooks to 10-year support by calling out obsolescence in the education sector. So, these people can make stuff happen. Little editing there. So big tech is really happy to promote sustainability, providing the growth and business as usual are undisturbed. And if you probe their environmental credentials, they often fall over due to chronic lack of credibility. And a perfect example of this can be found in the current issue of PC Pro, which I'll grab here. There you go, if you're on YouTube. And this, I know this is a bit like sort of bringing Apple in for teacher, because this interview was Tim's. Hang on, we've lost Olivia. No, she's back. There we go. I'll try that again. So this interview was Tim's, and he interviewed Acer's top bod in Europe and hits him with an absolutely top-tier line of questioning about repair, spare parts, schematics. And the answers, in my opinion, not great. So to sum up, Microsoft has well and truly pooped the bed for all the tech companies, and they've riled the activists who are energized and motivated to ensure that this sort of software obsolescence is absolutely nailed.
Okay, so if we look at that in terms of what's going to happen immediately for Windows 11, thank you for the plug, by the way, Lee, I do appreciate it. And the Apple you sent me this morning was great as well.
You can't fix it, though.
No, that's true. So Windows 11, though, fundamentally, we're still going to be dealing with a lot of e-waste, except realistically, lots of people are just going to keep on using their PCs, correct?
Yeah, that's certainly what I'm seeing at the moment. There's a lot of people that are just not bothering because they don't want to bother, or there's an increasing amount of people that just can't afford to change it. And those very attractive refurbs and low cost stuff, for increasingly amount of people that just that's just not on the list. Kids' shoes, food, mortgage, rent, whatever, that all comes before fixing a working computer. If it's not broke, don't fix it, as we used to say. So yeah, there's going to be a lot of unsupported stuff out there.
And so you are unique among us because you are facing people daily who have this problem. And a lot of them won't be buying new kit. So can you say, what are you advising to these people?
My advice, generally speaking, is don't panic, because I think I will caveat this heavily with if you are in a corporate environment or if you are dealing with people's information and things like that. I think there possibly might be some legal ramifications of what I'm about to say. But I think for your average home user, seriously, just don't panic. Firefox, I think, has even recently said it's going to be still supporting Windows 7 with browsers and stuff like that. So you're going to be covered that way. Most people have some form of antivirus software. Microsoft have not said they're turning off Defender or anything like that. You can certainly buy Norton cheap enough if you want that sort of coverage. Most people that I deal with who have a security incident, it's because they phoned the number which has appeared by a bogus advert on their screen and they've been scammed the old-fashioned way. It's nothing to do with machine compromises at all. So I had a gentleman 3 weeks ago, he's still running Windows XP, and I had to just sort out a little problem with his Google account because it all still works. And he's 85, and frankly, he doesn't want to buy anything because he says I might not be here next week, and I sort of get that. So, my advice is don't panic. You may find that your computing experience becomes more difficult over time as support stops and maybe functionality drops off. But, I'll leave it to others to sort of really sort of say how insecure this thing is. As I made the point in the Windows 10 feature a couple of issues ago, CrowdStrike ripped through Windows 11, which is fully patched up,
Yes, indeed. Well, before I go to John, which I will do, John, fear not. Olivia, I know this isn't really the area of law where you practice, but do you have any thoughts on the legality or otherwise of keeping on running Windows 10? Or you're muted. You're muted, Olivia.
Nope. And now she did disappear.
Oh dear.
It's okay. All right, Livy, do you want to drop out and drop back in again? We can cut all this out. Don't panic. Meanwhile, John will sing.
La 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 la.
Well, John is musical. John,
Well, absolutely.
You played piano up to very high standard, don't you, John?
Yeah, I decided not to be a concert pianist at the age of 16.
So did I.
I played in prom concerts, Festival Hall. Studied with Charles Dutoit, Pierre Boulez, Kirill Kondrashin, stuff like that. So
is your ear perfect? Can you do a scale in a perfect scale?
I have perfect pitch. I've always had perfect pitch.
Do you want to give us a la 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 whilst we're just waiting for Olivia to come back?
Olivia
Can you hear me?
No.
Yay!
Well, we can.
You can
I
hear
really, really wanted to get John to sing scales. But no.
John was about to do Nessun Dorma.
That's a window, isn't it? We're back to Windows. Ha 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 ha.
Very good.
I'll leave now. Yes. Okay.
We'll have to
bye.
save that for another time.
So I had
So-
been trying to fix the hissing issue, and obviously I fixed it by just making sure I was completely mute so nothing could be heard. So yeah.
It's a fix. Don't knock it.
Olivia, I was just turning to you for a legal take on whether it's reasonable to keep on running Windows 10 PCs.
Yes. But I mean, there's nothing in the law that just says you can't use Windows 10. That's written in a statute somewhere. But I think, as Lee hinted at, there in a corporate environment, there could well be security issues, and you need to follow your own internal corporate security policies and procedures, which may well include running up-to-date operating systems and being able to download the latest security patches and things like that to reduce the risk of a security breach. So even though, as Lee said, a lot of security breaches aren't because of that. They could have been because of human error or someone not following instructions in their policies. So yes, there are risks, but there's nothing that says it's illegal if you've done a proper security review and put other measures in place.
Okay. Thank you. So, as promised, John, I will turn to you now for your thoughts.
Okay, corporate space, you should be on Windows 11. The hardware, your hardware has been written off many years ago, and your estate of hardware should be on current platforms, and that's entirely apart from Olivia's entirely correct point about legal liabilities and so forth. I think especially if you're, as Lee said, if you're working on financial data or in a regulated environment and so on and so forth, then I think you have absolutely no excuse, frankly, and that would have been part of your turnover of hardware and therefore software. I mean, I think there are bigger problems out there. Yes, out there. I was at local hospital for a checkup and noticed that the web browser that they were using to connect through to their patient information system in this department was not HTTPS connected. And what could you say other than really? So anyway, come back to the bigger point. If you're corporate, it's not a problem. The interesting thing, of course, is that if you're in a truly secure environment, a true high security environment, then it doesn't really matter a damn. You could be running Windows 2000 simply because it's all air gapped anyway and there is no connection to the internet, so there's not a problem. The problem is the home users. And I mean that in a very loving and caring way, because they use this as a functional tool. It's not something that they write off against tax or as business, line of business expense or whatever. And they certainly don't get the benefit of training being paid for by somebody else. And so things that change are a problem. And yes, Windows 11 is, pretty much the same as Windows 10 in many ways. I get the point, although there are differences. You give someone who's been using Windows 10 for years and years and years on what they think is a perfectly reasonable piece of kit, and say you now need to pop into your local computing emporium and buy something running Windows 11, and they look at it and they don't know quite what they're looking at, and they neither have the time nor the inclination to even consider the migration cost. As again, we need to consider this. You want to move someone, and this is obviously something that Lee specializes in as a service. You want to move someone's world from Windows 10 to Windows 11. It's not trivial, okay? And it should be a lot easier than it is. But even with the best will in the world and tools out there for doing migration, it's not the wave of a magic Harry Potter wand. So there's that problem. I think the reality is for home users is, with the usual caveats, like you are not running mailing lists for your local rugby club or an e-shop or something, that kind of transactional small business stuff, provided you're being a home user, there's nothing wrong with Windows 10. Now, if Microsoft was to stop doing updates for Defender, there are an endless array of free antivirus products out there, the usual suspects, Avira, Avast, etc., 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 not recommending any one over any other, but they all do free product. And there's no reason why you can't download it onto your Windows 10 and keep it going. And they are still supporting back to Windows 7 on most of these platforms. So that aspect is not going to change. Chrome, and I think you said Firefox, these browsers are going to be supported directly on Windows 10 for the foreseeable future, probably long after the hardware itself has given up. So from the home users, I would just simply say, actually, you know what, just stuff on a free antivirus product, keep your browser up to date, and use your common sense, which is always the most important security tool out there, and is always the one that gets compromised because people make mistakes. I've made mistakes. I've clicked on the wrong thing before now. And it happens, but you've got to make sure, and in a way, in a sense, this is where our industry generally has done a pretty poor job, is making sure that your data is safe. If the machine blows up, the proverbial "I left my laptop on the back seat of the taxi," it shouldn't matter if your laptop goes bang or the power supply fails or something like that. Your data should be safe, and all credit to Microsoft with OneDrive, pushing stuff up into the cloud and trying to make people do that. We can sit here and stroke our beards as to whether it should be OneDrive or whether I should have equal access to Dropbox or something else. But at the end of the day, they are at least trying to get data off of people's computers into somewhere where it can be kind of looked after and do version control on it. So even if the current version gets scrambled, you can revert back to an older one. So I think there's
Can I just push back on OneDrive a little bit, John?
Yep.
Because you're right, and you did touch upon this, that should we have access to other suppliers to actually make it more affordable? Because at the moment, the trouble is that people are getting handcuffed to OneDrive, and then they are being forced to pay. They're suddenly going to have access to files, and we've covered this in the magazine before.
Sure. I think that's a different topic.
and-
Let's not get off the core topic.
No,
here.
I'm just saying look, we can give due. I think we can give due credit to Apple
Yep.
for this, because what we're talking about here is obsolescence and avoiding obsolescence, and making it as easy as possible for consumers and businesses alike to move from one physical piece of hardware to another. Because in this day and age, the fact that you're using one piece of hardware should be almost irrelevant. You should be able to jump from one machine to another. You should be assuming that your laptop is going to fail and die.
Absolutely. Yeah. And in fact, I'm going to have more words to talk on this topic later on in this podcast. But
Okay.
but no, I think Windows 10 should be accepted. I think Microsoft. I understand why they're doing what they're doing, and I think it's the wrong thing. Especially, I don't have a problem with them end of lifing Windows 10 in the corporate environment, because to me that's absolutely not an issue. Or the small business and the business environment. For the home users running Home Edition, that should be getting ongoing support. Because let's be quite brutally frank about this, they're still doing the work to do the support because they're having to do it for the people who have to pay for it. Yeah, but Windows 10 Home Edition should be getting ongoing support until they stop providing chargeable support to businesses. And I think they are missing a really big trick here. I've raised it before, and it's a complete kite flying thing, because I don't know if it's true or not, but you could see how it could be true as to just how much pressure Microsoft has been under from the OEM hardware providers, naming no names, but we can all come up with a top 5 list of vendors, to push out and enforce Windows 11, because it has been forcing a hardware platform change and trying to do that in the home environment. And I think, Microsoft has been caught between a rock and a hard place here, and I feel for them, but I think now is the time to say those people that were going to stump up the money to move to new hardware have already done so, and those that aren't, can't afford to, as Lee quite rightly says, or don't want to because they don't want the complexity and the hassle and the migration issue and so forth, Microsoft should just say, do you know what? We'll just keep supporting Home Edition as long as we can, and we'll give you as much notice as we can as to when we can't do this anymore, but we'll give you at least six month notice, and that I think will be a very honourable thing for them to do.
Okay, thank you, Lee. I know we kind of hijacked the main point you were trying to make about e-waste and future improvements. So I don't know if you just want to round that off before we move on to the next topic.
No, I don't think there's much more to say. John makes all very valid points, as does Olivia. I think
What
he's
about
just going to
me,
be.
Lee? Did I not
No.
make any valid points?
You make increasingly valid points on page 12 and 13 of this month's PC Pro. I cannot tell you how excited I was when I read that. Genuinely, Tim, and I haven't mentioned this to you at all. So, I think you did a stunning job there. And it shows exactly what the OEMs sort of think about this sort of issue. But I think it's going to be interesting in this space as we go forward. As I've dripped right to repair things to you over the years, and little changes, and they're all starting to build up. And these people are right, because what John has just said about sort of Windows 11 and the hardware requirements, I've been asked a lot at the moment about what's going to be Windows 12. If I buy this new computer, will it be Windows 12 compatible? Because I'm a retailer, and I'm the one that gets it in the neck that I've sold someone a machine 5 years ago that now has got to go in the bin. Why did I sell them that? And so I have discussions about Windows 12, and I say, we know nothing about it, whether it'll ever exist. But I said, if you look at what is happening with Microsoft at the moment, and look at Copilot Plus PCs and this NPU that's in there, it's not beyond the realms of possibility that Windows 12 will require an NPU for some bogus reason. So in which case, a lot of the Windows 11 machines are also going in the bin. Now, this is absolutely pure speculation, but if they've done it once, they'll do it again. So it's up to these amazing activists that do some great work to really get in there and sort this out, because we're getting to a point where, sales for sales sake is old school thinking. We need to start looking at the amount of waste that's being generated, because that we can't afford. But that's a discussion for another day. But yeah, I'm enthused to see what's going to happen here.
Thank you. Okay, Olivia, over to you for a fine.
Yeah, well, this is an update on a case that's been rumbling on for many years now, and it was last week the Upper Tribunal published a decision, this is in the UK, on a Clearview AI data protection case that has been rumbling, as I say, since 2022, when the ICO issued a fine and an enforcement notice against them. So that Clearview AI, US facial recognition company, used by law enforcement authorities for investigations purposes. And they hold a database of images that they have obtained from the internet, and they gather together faces that are similar and have probabilities of whether they're the same person. And law enforcement agencies and public and private sector bodies can log on to or get an account with they subscribe to the database and upload their own image and see if they can find images that are similar to the one they've uploaded. So that's the background to what they do, and they are headquartered in the US and didn't have any UK operations at the time of their activities for which they were originally fined. So in 2022 the ICO took enforcement action against them because specifically of the US company's use of images of UK individuals for their database, and saying this breached UK data protection law. Now, core to this decision was that the ICO considered that UK data protection law applied to Clearview in the US, and Clearview appealed and said, well, no, actually we're outside the scope of UK law, so you shouldn't be issuing enforcement action against us or issuing us a fine because UK data protection law doesn't apply to us. So there were two key issues really to consider. One was whether the territorial scope of UK law covered them, and also whether what's known as the material scope covered them, whether the type of activities they were doing fell within the scope of UK GDPR or EU GDPR, because actually the activities predated Brexit too. And initially they appealed to what's called the first tier tribunal, which was 2 years, 2023 now, 22 years ago. And so in the first tier tribunal decided, well, no, UK law doesn't apply to them. And there were a couple of reasons for this. The first reason was they just considered, because they worked for law enforcement authorities, this was outside the material scope of UK and EU data protection law, that should be covered by other areas of law. There's law enforcement laws that would cover that. But secondly, they themselves, Clearview themselves, weren't monitoring UK individuals, which was the test as to whether UK law applied. They weren't monitoring UK individuals. The law enforcement authorities were monitoring UK individuals, and whilst their activities related to that, this brought them outside the scope of the material scope of the law. So some very technical issues discussed there. And the Upper Tribunal, however, has disagreed, and this is the exciting decision that was issued last week. They said, no, what Clearview are doing themselves does amount to monitoring of UK individuals. And so they considered that using the web crawlers to scrape images of faces, grouping together the faces, and applying probabilities of matching, putting metadata together with those images, describing where they got them from, that in itself counts as monitoring of UK individuals. And then they said, well, they said something quite funny about the decision that they were outside the material scope. They said that the reasons the tribunal gave for its decision making are very sparse indeed. So they've now decided that Clearview in the US is subject to UK law because its activities is monitoring UK individuals, aside, but even before they sell that to their law enforcement clients and their law enforcement customers. So that's where we're at now. And the next point, it's been gone back to the first tier tribunal to decide whether they've breached UK law. So now they've established 3 years down the line that they have breached UK law. I'm sorry, the law applies to them. They now need to decide whether actually they breached UK law in collecting this data about UK data subjects. So I mean, it's a really interesting case, and there are a lot of technical data protection points in there. But I think the key messages coming from that is that if you are a non-UK company, that includes a US company, and you're conducting activities that involve use of data relating to UK data subjects, UK individuals, you need to be very careful because UK law could still apply to you. I didn't say the amount of the fine, did I? The amount of the fine was how much? It was quite a big fine. £7.5 million and an enforcement notice telling them to stop using UK data subjects data.
Yeah, this is a very surprising. Well, it's surprising on some counts because I'd completely forgotten about this. If I'm honest with you, Olivia, I remember the original case, and I remember being very surprised that this was allowed to happen, and then I think the fact that the tribunal, and this is the first big question for me actually to you. Probably big question marks are happening here around the tribunal and the methods they're using. If they are saying that the comments they made, the justifications they made, are sparse.
Yeah, so I mean that was a criticism of the first tier tribunal's decision, but I mean it was following a usual appeal process. So action taken by the ICO gets appealed to the first tier tribunal, and then if that's still disagreed with, it goes up to the upper tribunal. So it's perfectly usual for the upper tribunal, as with the court system when it goes up, to disagree with decisions. But you're right, the criticism about its reasoning for making the decision, and it also disagreed with its decision about the monitoring, that Clearview wasn't actually conducting monitoring, the first tier tribunal said, and they disagreed with that too. So I mean it's not abnormal for higher tribunal or higher courts to disagree with decisions of lower courts.
Okay, let's turn to one of my fellows for their comments on this. John, what's your stance?
My first question, I guess, like all sort of right thinking people, would be, why on earth does this take so long? You know,
Yes.
there's a process going on here which is, let's be generous and say, dubious at best. Okay, depending upon which court and which decision you want to go with. But the reality is that what is happening is not in dispute, which is that UK data and content and pictures of people and so forth is being scraped and collated and analysed, and then presumably sold for money back to various organisations. Now, why is this still? Why can't this be sorted out in a couple of months?
Yeah.
I mean, obviously, Olivia, I'm showing my abject naivety about how the legal process works. But as a mere commoner sat on the sidelines here, it does seem to me to be quite sort of outrageously inept.
Okay, yeah. So, I mean, one of the reasons it took long for the decision is it is an incredibly complex area. I've tried to sort of summarise it in 5 minutes what happened, but this issue of territorial scope and material scope is really complex, and we're going on the wording that was drafted at EU level, because it was originally the EU GDPR, it's now the UK GDPR, and trying to interpret that in the context of things have moved on since the GDPR was drafted. What does behavioural monitoring mean in the world we live in today? Something quite different. The issue of material scope had never really been considered in this context before. The big gap was actually between the first tier tribunal hearing and its decision. So there was almost a year. It was November 2022 they had the hearing, and they didn't issue their decision till October 2023. So there was almost a year. And I think it was because it was such a complex issue, it took them a year. So I agree that was a long time. Since then,
to interrupt you, Olivia, to a layman like me who stays as far away from the legal processes as I can, because usually it doesn't end up nicely for anybody concerned. You know, if I collapse on the floor and get taken in an ambulance to hospital, then a nominated grown-up called a doctor or a surgeon or whatever can decide what's wrong with me and get me onto an operating theatre and cut into me and sort the problem out. And they can do that within about 3 hours. So why would it be? I hear what you're saying, and you know full well I'm not getting at you about this, Olivia. I'm trying to understand why it is that they would have their meetings and hearings and then take a year to decide what the hell they were going to write.
Because of I mean, it isn't abnormal in the court process or the tribunal process to have a gap between the hearing and decisions, but I agree with you, and this time it was an extremely long time.
And I apologise to Ninja Nurse, our great friend on the channel. I should have used the term clinician. So I'm duly wrist slapped there by our good friend.
Lee, any thoughts?
Well, I guess just to sort of stand on the back of what John says, I was staggered, slightly staggered, but with the unit, how long this had taken. But then again, I thought, I was quite surprised that Clearview was still in business, because I remember talking. We did them 3 times in 2022 for various things. I guess this is what has all started this off. But what Olivia was saying about the fact that they don't recognise that, they don't operate in Europe and it cannot be punished or particularly fined in the EU. and doing a little bit of digging them yesterday, as far as I'm aware, they don't actually pay any fines. I wonder if Olivia had any aspect of that, because they don't recognise the jurisdiction. They just don't pay. So they could have been fined, a million unicorns here. They're not paying.
Well, yes. So it's only this is an interesting. There's a question I've got as well, because the original enforcement was 2022. They've been following an appeal, and it's not even finished yet, because they're now under the jurisdiction of UK law. They've decided, but they still have to go back and decide whether they actually breached UK law. So the first step is it applies to them. Now, have they breached it? So it's still rumbling on. It's 3 years later. It's still rumbling on. They're not paying the fine because they've appealed it. But the almost bigger issue here is are they still using UK data subjects data? Have they put it on hold? Have they deleted it? Because that's rumbling on still as well. But also, how do you get them to pay the fine eventually? Do they have a UK presence now? Because at the time they didn't have a UK presence. I believe they may have a UK presence now. So it's more certain that UK data protection law does now apply to them, not just from the US, but from the UK. That might be the case going forward. But yes, certainly for the past breaches and the past use, it still rumbles on, and they probably haven't paid the fine yet because they haven't determined whether they've breached the law yet in the tribunal.
Olivia, I don't know how easy this question will be to answer, but how likely is it that our images, the people listening to this podcast, will have been uploaded to the Clearview database?
That's good. So if your image is in the public facing internet, so they haven't tried to break any paywalls or anything like that. They're just images from the internet on social media, on websites that's free to access. They probably have gathered it because that's what they do. But as you say, I can't tell you 100% because I don't know all their algorithms that they used. But it's they're accessing free images. Yeah.
All right. Thank you very much. Let us move on to the next item, which is all about equity, John.
Well, and it's also about images, of course, which is, going to get Olivia nicely riled up even more, which is going to be a delight to see. So basically, the Performing Arts Union Equity, who we all know represents all sort of actors and actresses. I know you have to call everybody actors, don't you? I do apologise. All the actors and so forth out there. They have said that they want to do direct action, i.e. stop acting, I guess, over companies specifically in the entertainment world and in the tech world, using the likenesses and voices and so forth of their members in AI-generated content without the permission of the actor in question. And obviously what also follows from that is that the actor is not being suitably reimbursed for this use, they would claim. Now, this goes back an awfully long time in the industry. Has there not been cases some years ago of very well-known actors sort of selling digital rights of themselves for future productions and so forth? And I think this has also been spun into the contract for a film by the financial backers, that if an actor is to drop dead in the middle of production, it can have catastrophic effects on the making of the film. So you could imagine how the insurers would say, well, we need to have the right to at least complete the film using some modern facsimile. Now, in the past, that was really very difficult. Although the likes of the Rory Bremners and so forth, if I'm showing my age, could do some very good impressions of people, that's not quite the same thing as finishing a film, and it's certainly not the same thing as finding somebody who looks like Leonardo DiCaprio sufficiently to finish off Titanic. But nowadays it is possible, because the AI technologies are good enough out there to create what in a negative sense we would call deep fake, and in a positive sense you could say is digital representations. So they are, apparently Paul Fleming, their General Secretary, they're going to coordinate mass data requests to companies to force them to declare whether they have used any of their data in AI-generated material without rights. Now that's going to be obviously quite a monumental paperwork storm for anybody that comes on the receiving end of this. And it's something that was clearly, obviously, coming over the hill. It was going to happen, and we should not be in any way surprised. And I'm not taking sides on this. I think actors should be reimbursed for what they do, but it does open the interesting question, which is what is the actual monetary value to a cinema production company or a TV company or whatever of a particular name actor, and why do they hold the value that they do? Because if you can actually get a really good AI generated actor that can do all the performing and the speaking and everything, that might actually in time, because of course production cost of this is still going to be quite high, could actually turn into being a very lucrative way of generating your own talent rather than actually moving physical talent likeness over into the virtual world. So, I mean, there's a whole bunch of questions that are going to fall out of this, but it's going to be interesting to see where this goes in terms of a lawsuit.
Well, there's a billion questions. So, Olivia, I'll allow you to choose which ones you wish to answer.
Well, oh, the questions on the chat, you mean? Yeah.
Oh well, no, I just
no,
meaning
sorry.
generally because
Wicked.
this.
Oh yes,
this
I mean this is a minefield. But so many things going through my head with this. I mean, some of the first. I mean, one of the questions is: are they actually using this personal data at all? I think part of it is that the companies are saying, well, we haven't used. It's just a coincidence. These mannerisms are similar and the voices are similar. But the second question is, if they are using it, are they using it lawfully? And how do you demonstrate this? Once it's sort of fed into the AI, is it almost impossible to actually demonstrate what precisely was used to generate this, the other images and the voices and so on? A really interesting point, I think, came out, and I think John hinted at there. They're using what's known as subject access requests as a mechanism to try and weed out what information they've got. First of all, I mean, is there any response to that? How I think they're finding it difficult to respond to these subject access requests already because they don't quite know how the data was generated and how the output was generated. But there was something, and certainly in the article I read, which I think they need to be quite careful about in making these mass subject access requests, because they seem to imply they're using it as a tool to try and achieve something other than getting access to the data. What they want is to enter into collective licensing agreements and get money out of it for using the actors' images and voices, rather than it just being used for free. And that's not the purpose of a subject access request. The purpose of an access request is to allow individuals to understand how their data are being used, not with necessarily with an ulterior motive to enter into these licensing agreements. So if they do genuinely want their information, that's one thing. But if they're actually just using a tool to cause disruption and hassle with another goal, that might not be a valid subject access request. So that, I think that's a really interesting element of it, as are they using the subject access request correctly? And even if they are, don't know how they're going to be responded to, but if they aren't, they need to be careful that it's they don't need to respond to it because they've got an ulterior motive there.
So, with apologies if we've kind of covered this already, but what do you think? So we've got Bryony Munro, this 28-year-old from East Renfrewshire, I said that wrong, I'm sure, who says that her face has been used to make a digital character by the talent studio. Oh my God, definitely can't say this correctly. Xikoya, Xikoia, and there should be a law against names like that, by the way. So, how on earth do you prove that your face has been used for such things?
Well, I think that's what. Sorry, John. Do you mind me stepping in on that?
No, please do.
Yeah. I think that's why they're making the subject access request, to try and get the background to how this image was generated. But I think the AI company is saying, well, how do we show precisely the data that was used to generate this image? And I think they were saying, well, we made it up ourselves. We started from scratch. We used our own algorithms. So that's what they're trying to use subject access requests initially as a tool for. But then moving on from that, they're saying, well, okay, if you can't provide us with the data, we need you to compensate or enter into a licensing agreement. And so it's quite interesting.
Lee, let's give you the final word on this topic.
I've got a few final words, actually. Excuse me, I'll cough. There we go. I'll cut that out. Earlier this year, I was at a couple of comic conventions, and I got to speak to performers who are voice actors. So basically they lend their voice to, I guess, a video game or something like that, and also do motion capture work and things like that. And so these guys are actors, but their main income is sourced from making a performance, but then they disappear because it's then animated out or whatever. I had a good chat with quite a few of these. And there was a huge scuffle between a couple of actors networks in America, and basically over all this, and basically things like the companies were seeking loopholes in that. They were saying that motion capture work was data rather than a performance. And there's a voice actor called Sarah Elmala, and she told The Guardian that it turns out, and this is her quote, "It turns out employers would like to be able to use all past game performances and any external material without consent or compensation. This means that anything you've performed in, TV or film-wise, anything you've put on social media, any interviews, anything they can ingest that's already out there on the internet, all of that is fair game." And that's the position they were in. And I've mentioned it a few times before. A game that my kids play a lot is called Genshin Impact, which has I dread to think how many voice actors that thing employs. I mean, it's a massive game. And this action, this campaign in America stopped the launch of certain new elements of this game, and certain actors were fired because they stepped over the line. It all got very political. And now when you go into the game, you used to be able to click on your character and you would see who the voice actor was. And there's now a lot of characters that either don't speak, or the voice actor is anonymous, and basically they've just been replaced by AI. But they sound absolutely the same. I think there's a difference between. I understand what Equity is doing, and I think they need to do it. And if you are an actor that is listening to this, if you go onto the Equity website, apologies, I'm jumping subjects here. There is a stack of information on the Equity website about what's going on, what you need to look at. AI awareness. They're doing really quite a good job here, I think, because it's not just the people that actually appear in front of the camera, it's also the people that just appear in your ear, because it affects them too. And it is a lot easier to basically AI a voice than is a person. So they really have taken the fight. And the result of that is that there's a lot more regulation now on, for example, performers must give informed consent before their voice or image can be replicated by AI. And this consent must be specific to the project and can't be blanket approval. So there's a lot more tightening up because of these people's actions. So, the legislation has moved in the favour of the performers once, and hopefully Equity can do a bit more to strengthen it up. But it does feel like everyone is sort of standing in the water, commanding the sea to stop, and eventually it's not going to. I do feel sorry for these people, because it will eventually cost people some livelihood.
Indeed. Okay, well, we are running a little bit late, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to squash what was going to be our fourth longest story into our already expanded nibs section. So I will jump straight into it now, which is that basically British businesses, after a kind of flurry of attacks on the likes of Jaguar, on the likes of the Co-op, on Marks and Spencer's. I mean, we've all seen these over the past few weeks and months. The National Cybersecurity Centre has said that all UK businesses should be thinking about having their plans, their cyber resilience plans, their contingency plans on pen and paper, rather than being trapped in some sort of electronic version which they may not be able to access. This seems pretty darn obvious to me, but let me turn to John very quickly. I know I was going to say this was going to be a nib, but John, are your plans on paper or not?
Well, I guess we kind of could, really, but I mean, there's an awful lot of data in Excel and so forth. And the plan here, of course, is to make sure that you have multiple copies of it, and it's all up to date, and it's off-site, and all of these grown-up things. I think that telling people to go back to pen and paper is a bit kind of unrealistic here, I have to say.
Okay, well, that's what the suggestion is coming through. So, obey it as you will. It is advice. But one thing that also came through, and I just think it's worth shouting about before we move on to the next story, is that there is a very good service called Cyber Essentials that small companies of any size can take. Part of it is self-assessment, which you can do without a fee. But if you actually want to get a certificate, which will help when it comes to insurance, and in fact, some cases can actually provide freely cyber insurance, then it will cost you £300. But anyway, if you've not looked into Cyber Essentials and you are a small business or medium-sized business, then it's definitely worth doing. The next item is, as demanded, John, Apple's news.
Yeah, Apple have launched a trio of M5-based products. Now, M, of course, being the CPU family, indicating the generation. Within each generation, there are multiple versions. There's the base level, which in this case is the M5. Then there will be an M5 Pro, an M5 Max, and then for the really, really big stuff, there'll be an M5 Ultra. In the same way that there is currently of the M4. They've launched new devices using the base level M5. Undoubtedly, there will be M5 Max, M5 Pro, Ultra and stuff coming, but probably not until the new year. So there is a new MacBook Pro 14-inch with M5 processor. I'm a bit disappointed on that one because there's no Wi-Fi 7 on it, but that's going to require Apple to move their own Wi-Fi chipset in, which is what they've done for the iPhones 17s. There is a new M5 Apple Vision Pro, which kind of puts people in their place who said, oh, this is a product with no future. It's a comprehensive re-engineering. It is the same platform, the same use case, the same everything, but it now has 120 frames per second frame rate on the displays, which is a significant improvement on the 90, and slightly higher resolution. So the thing that's annoying me with that is that there is no trade-in plan from the first one to the new, from the M2 version to the M5 version. If you look at Apple's phone and tablet stuff, there's always a trade-in plan, but they haven't announced one yet. But nevertheless, I think that's going to be a very interesting product because of what it allows you to do on device in terms of heavyweight processing and video work. And there is a new M5 based iPad Pro. Again, exactly what you would expect. More CPU performance, better battery life, more loveliness all round. At the moment, I would say I'm not thinking of upgrading anything, especially with the Vision Pro not having a trade-in. If there was a trade-in, then that would certainly help the price, because that starts at just over 3,000 quid for the basic unit. But we'll see. I may get a little tickle there and feel that I need to go. But obviously we will be looking at them. So that's the new M5 stuff coming. There will be more M5 chip family announcements in terms of more high power versions of the chip, as I said, possibly running into the springtime.
Thank you. That sounded like a weather forecast just at the end there. Lee, the next nib is with you.
The German state of Schleswig-Holstein has ditched Microsoft Exchange and Outlook for open source alternatives. Over 40,000 mailboxes and 100 million messages and calendar entries have been shifted to OpenExchange and Thunderbird in a move which wasn't entirely about cost. Minister Dirk Schroedter said, "We want to become independent of large tech companies and ensure digital sovereignty." The same state has already ditched Microsoft Office for LibreOffice, as have many of my customers as it happens, and currently working with Nextcloud on other aspects of transition. Many other EU government agencies have also dropped Microsoft. Various Danish government agencies, the Australian military, the French city of Lyon have already bailed.
Okay, thank you. Right, well, this next nib could easily be a longer story, but it's probably safer that it isn't, which is that ChatGPT will soon allow erotica for verified adults. So says Sam Altman. This is based on a post on X, which Mr. Altman made on Tuesday, where he said that upcoming versions would enable it to behave in a more human-like way. But only if you want it, he said, not because we are usage maxing. Anyway, so this is part of a slight trend that we are seeing for these models to actually move into the adult territory. So we shall see how that actually occurs. They say that this is Mr. Altman again, Sam Altman, we realise this made it less useful and enjoyable to many users who had no mental health problems in response to the restrictions they'd already placed due to mental health issues. But given the seriousness of the issue, we wanted to get this right. So this is them getting it right. They're trying to do it in a responsible way. We shall see if it works. Next nib, please, Olivia.
So this is a story of Tesla is being investigated by the US National Highway Traffic Safety Administration Agency following reports that their electric vehicles, self-driving vehicles, are driving on the wrong side of the road and not stopping at red lights, so they're breaking traffic laws. And apparently they've had 58 reports, which, even though that's not a large percentage of the number of cars out there, it is quite a big number for safety issues. So this is for full self-driving supervised mode, so cars can make lane changes and turns, but drivers always have to be alert to take over. But according to the reports, the drivers are being given little notice or opportunity to intervene, which is why they've not been able to intervene with going through red lights and changing lanes. So obviously quite a safety worry with these vehicles.
Say so. Okay, all right. Thank you very much, Olivia. John, you are the adult in the room with
Am
a
I?
new piece. Well, I say it very lightly,
Thank you.
but you're certainly the person with the hot hardware in their clutches.
Yes, I mentioned this a few weeks ago. There's obviously the ongoing story about Synology and drives and what hard disks you can use and so forth, and that's a story that's changing, but maybe not as much and as well as we want. But Unify, Ubiquiti, their unified platform, which is really going guns across an awfully wide range of capabilities, have launched some NAS products. I like Unify. In fact, it's actually the core network on our 4 sites, and it works very well. And their Wi-Fi stuff is excellent, and their security camera stuff is excellent too. Anyway, back at the beginning of the year, you'll remember I talked about, and we actually did a hot hardware on their first offering, which was a 19-inch rack mount 2U unit called the UNAS Pro, which was the really rather bargain price of £395 plus VAT, so £474 for a 7-bay NAS unit. Now, as we said at the time, the software was a bit raw, a bit V1, but they have been working, I think it's fair to say, quite furiously at improving and rounding out the platform, and where they've got to now is really quite impressive, I have to say. And I've been soak testing and using the UNAS Pro that I bought at the beginning of the year, and I stuffed 7 14 terabyte drives into it, and it's worked flawlessly without a hitch. But they've announced basically an entirely new version 2 range, and much broader range than was expected. I was kind of expecting them to do a new version of the UNAS Pro, but they've actually done 4 units. And we'll look at the top and the bottom of that range, because I have bought both of them just out of sheer curiosity, because why not? So at the bottom end, which I guess will make the focus of our hot hardware this week, because the platform is exactly the same. The software you run, the NAS platform you interact with, and the capabilities is exactly the same across the smallest to the biggest. The only difference is the hardware component. So there's something called the UNAS 2, which is a desktop unit, absolutely designed to be for home and very small business users. It's a 2-drive unit. It's £159 plus VAT, so 190 quid plus hard disks. So you could do what I did, which was to take a couple of old 8 terabyte or 6 terabyte drives out of an old NAS and pop it in, and it just works, and it mirrors. It will not allow you to span. It will only mirror for good reasons. It's got a 2.5 gig power over in Ethernet plus port, so there's no mains plug on it. It's PoE in, and it does come with an injector if you don't have PoE++. So it's a 2-drive.
For people who aren't familiar with those terms, that means it will supply power over Ethernet, so you don't actually need to have a separate power supply.
Absolutely. The power comes in on the network cable, so you just plug it in and the thing boots up. Okay, so that's the 2-unit. There's then a 4-unit version called UNAS 4. Again, desktop, a bit more serious, a bit bigger, which is 300 notes plus VAT, 360 quid. That takes 4 hard disks, but it also takes 2 M.2 drives for cache. It's also 2.5 gig PoE. Then you get into the 2 new rack mount versions, which is the UNAS 4 and the UNAS Pro 4 and the UNAS Pro 8. That's a 4-bay 1U and an 8-bay 2U. Here we're getting a lot more serious. Again, 2 M.2 cache and 10 gig Ethernet ports and mains. And on the big one, the big version 8, the big Pro 8, you can actually have 2 independent failover mains power supplies on it. So I've bought the Pro 8, and I've put 8 16 terabyte Unify branded Toshiba hard disks into it, and 2 1 terabyte M.2. The big boy is £635 plus VAT, 762, and it was about over 2,000 quid for 8 16 terabyte drives. So I've got myself 100 terabytes of storage with hot standby and RAID 5. So great piece of kit, goes like the wind. 10 terabit interfaces on them. 3 of them, 2 of them SFP and 110. Did I say terabit? I do apologise. Gigabit interfaces on Ethernet, and you can just plonk it on your network. You do not need to have any other unified controllers. You don't need to have a fabric controller. You don't need a router. You can just drop this onto any network and it will just plug in and work. And they have got really good software there for you setting up accounts and so forth. The platform is really strong. And as I said, it's the same platform at the bottom end as it is at the top end. It can do really useful things like sharing files and folders out to people on the internet. You can just give it to them, give them a URL and a password and a timeout on the link, and they can go and get files from you without having to set up incoming routes through your firewall or anything otherwise quite so tacky. But you can also do things like backing up from the device itself straight into cloud services. You can use OneDrive, obviously Dropbox, but also Backblaze and so forth. And it's a cracking piece of kit. And when you consider that the bottom end, it's £159 plus VAT, plus 2 hard disks. Now you can put a couple of 4s in there if you wanted to be a bargain. A couple of 4 terabytes will give you 4 terabytes of mirrored storage. Pop that in your house, you've got a fantastic storage. Or you can go as into the multiple hundreds of terabytes if you want to do that with the big version. So, what's the caveat? The caveat is this is NAS storage. This is network attached storage. This is not an application platform. You can't run Docker containers on it and virtual machines and applications and all the rest of the stuff that you can do on things like Synology. It is storage. But I think we're coming to a point now where, given how good micro PCs, mini PCs, and so forth are, that it's almost a little bit passé, the Synology model of trying to be storage and application services and virtual machine management and so forth in one box. And so I'm looking on these Unify NAS boxes with a lot of fondness. They seem to be working very well, but obviously a lot of soak testing there. And I think at the bottom end, we were talking earlier about Windows 10 and hardware's support for making sure your data is safe. Oh, they support Time Machine if you're a Mac user, so you can just plonk them onto your network and then back up all of your machines automatically with version control onto one of these boxes. It's an easy fit and forget. There's an awful lot there to like, and the prices I think are really keen, and I commend it to the panel.
Okay, thank you, John. I've got a few questions from the Discord crew. Arnie B, there's some of it actually relating to the power supply. So there has been some concern over relying on PoE, well PoE++, on this. Can you allay such concerns? For example, Arnie B says, is having no fuse an issue with PoE?
I don't think so. You can use their injector. You can come off your own switch if you've got that switch support. I don't see PoE as being a problem. It's an extremely well designed solution that's been around forever. So I don't see PoE or PoE++. And there's even a PoE++ out there for even higher power capabilities. But no, I don't think that's a problem at all.
And I'm correct in thinking that an adapter or a power supply actually comes in the box. Is that correct?
For the 2 desktop versions, it comes with a PoE++ injector, which you can use if you wish, or not if you don't want to, if you've got the capability on the switches. The rack mount versions, the 4-bay comes with a single PSU built in and an IC mains cable. The 8-bay, the bigger one, comes with 1 power supply built in and a slot for a second, and they are hot swappable. And it's 100 and something quid for a second power supply, if you want to factor that into your design.
And do you need special network cables to have the PoE? I can't keep on saying this. PoE++ grade cables.
Just any sensible network cables coming from your switch will be fine. I'm actually connected up the 8 using 10 GBE to 10 GBE SFP to SFP cabling. So it's like a Super Ethernet cable over copper or over fibre. That's no problem.
All right. Lee, do you have any questions or thoughts?
I don't have any questions at all. So I shall save my powder for the voting.
Okay. Olivia, what about you?
I just want to clarify that I heard correctly on the price. Did you say the smaller one is 159 plus VAT and the larger one was 635 plus VAT?
Yeah, the smaller one, which is the smaller of the two desktops, is 159 plus VAT, so 190 plus hard disks.
Okay.
And at the other end of the scale, it's 635 plus VAT, 762, which is 8 bays and a much more, serious piece of kit.
Okay, thank you.
File system, John. Dr. XXXX says is already voting cold as it appears to be ext4 only, an old-fashioned file system, vulnerable to bit rot. He says. What say you?
Well, I've got it running in RAID 6, so I've got redundancy there, an error correction on the file system anyway. I don't particularly care what's the file system is natively in the box, provided it works. And of course, just to be, sound totally smug, which is very dangerous because, of course, it'll all go horribly wrong this afternoon. This is not going to be your single point of storage for your most important data. It's going to be part of a bigger plan. And as I said, the cloud integration into these cloud backup services, whether you want to use OneDrive, Dropbox at the lower level or up to Backblaze B2 and so forth, means that you can just ensure that data is sent out to the cloud from the NAS directly without you having to do anything. It just will automatically send itself out. Yeah, you have to pay for that service, but backup is never free.
So let's just very quickly identify what could be a workable, or how this could fit into a workable backup system for a home user then, John.
Well, for a home user, you would take, the bottom unit, the 2-bay, stuff a couple of 8 terabytes in that's going to be sort of 100 quid each, or under 100 quid each, I would think, for 8 terabytes. That will give you 8 terabytes of storage. You then set up accounts on it. It's a web interface, and there's good apps for it as well. Set up accounts for everybody, and it includes a home folder for each person. Their identity management tools for desktops and mobile is very good, so it will just log you in with your credentials. You then have access to it, and it's just another drive on your machine. It integrates into your Finder and so forth, file manager, and then you can just put things onto it, and then you can have shared folders around the family if you wish to do so, and then the administrator, sort of the nominator grown-up looking after this, and of course you can have multiples of those accounts, can then set up that it all gets pushed up to the cloud for backup purposes and so forth as necessary.
Thank you. And actually, just can people? Is there an app on this to allow people to view files on it remotely or not?
Yeah, you can get into it through Web Redirect, through their tools. That's absolutely no problem at all.
All right, thank you. I think we're at the position where we can vote. Mr. Grant, let you go first.
I've been listening to this because in the next year I'm going to have to change a considerable amount of my infrastructure. So I am in the market for NAS and router options. So this has been very interesting. I'm pleased we're doing it. So I think fundamentally this comes down to what you want. If you want app support and your NAS to do a lot of things, then possibly Synology or Ugreen, would get it by a nose. But as John sort of pointed out, there's an argument, particularly what Synology's been trying to do and rolling back on with drives and stuff like that. And also traditionally what they do with the long-term support of some of these apps, you would start to sort of question that possibly. But the compromise seems to be that to hit this price point, because your basic Synology is also 190, their DS223J. You sacrifice hardware performance to get this free software on the Synologies and the Ugreen. So if you want a simple file server with a few add-ons and much better hardware, then the UNAS 2 is really the Badger. So yeah, and especially if you've got Unify kit, and the PoE powering option is a very nice little touch for people that have that facility. So I have to say, all things considered, I think this is a very nice little piece of kit. So I'm going to give it a hot.
And can I just say on the PoE plus side, if you have got networking through your house, which of course all grown-up PC Pro users will have, because it's PoE++, there's no difficulty at all of stuffing it in the loft space of your house, because all you need to do is to run an Ethernet cable up to it, and that can be 50 meters long, or plus, even more than 50 meters, and it will power it.
That makes it even hotter. So it gets my hot vote. What about you, Olivia?
Now, I was initially scared by the prices you were saying and the cost you had spent on your storage devices and the NAS equipment. So then with the lower price end, actually, that's quite good. And I like simple data storage. I don't want anything fancier. I like the fact that it's simple data storage. So I think I'm going to give it hot too. Yeah.
And actually, for someone like you, Olivia, who might want to have one unit in your house, if your budget stretches to it, buy a second one, put it in your garage, and because they will actually replicate one to the other. So even if the first one dies, the second one will still have all your data live. But that's only an additional spend.
Thank you.
Right, John, hot or not?
Me, hot. I think they're really hot. I'm really pleased by it. You know, I spent my own money, as they say, Gov, on this. And so I now have 3 Synology NASs. I've got the original rack mount 7-bay. I've got the 2-bay, which I bought just because I thought it looked cute and interesting to look at the price point. And the big one is going to, over the next months, is probably going to become the cornerstone of the storage in the lab.
Thank you. And I think you misspoke there because you said Synology. Well, I think you meant.
Oh, I'm sorry. Yes, sorry. Unify.
Okay. All right. Well, it's a clean sweep in the virtual studio, but it's very much a clean. Well, not quite clean. Almost clean. What do you say when there are 2 votes? Does that make it something unclean? Anyway, there are 2 votes of not and many more votes for hot. So I think we can call that a categorical win. So congratulations, John. You take away your prize, which is a feeling of smugness, which you can carry through to the end to our next podcast in a week's time. Until then, goodbye.
Bye.
Goodbye.
Bye.
I think you're right, Olivia. Always keep people waiting. Just
I'm replying to a comment here.
The anticipation. Right. I'm going to close this down and see what happens.